Now we're going to assess the budget, and of course, who better join us on Afia TV political and economic correspondent Nnamdi Obanya. Nnamdi, so good to have you. Good morning.
Good to be here this morning.
Great to have you.
Well,
you saw the budget, you watched it, you saw it being presented. Yes. Now it's a proposed budget, waiting for the State House of Assembly to go ahead and confirm it. The estimate, all right? The appropriation bill.
I love the title.
Yeah.
Renewed.
The budget of renewed momentum.
Oh, nice.
So renewed indeed. So that has now become like the new mantra. Renewed hope meets tomorrow is here. Right. So I know you have a lot to say. So I'm just going to now, give you the floor.
But before you start,
so much so.
Was that tag literally necessary?
The tag?
Yeah. If you
well, I mean, our governors have made it a point to name budgets. We saw the Ebonyi State governor with his oxymoronic budget, which was hope and actualizations, two things that, infer and insinuate two different things.
Diverse.
An intangible, aspirational thought and an actual tangible experience. And your budget is of two things, two opposite ends of the spectrum. I don't know what to make of it. We knew former governor of Cross River, Professor Ben Ayade, he had all sorts of budgets. My favorite being a budget of blush and bliss. So he had all sorts of them. So governors will name budgets. This whole, I think Enugu'S excited by, I think they won 100 million Naira renewed green initiative. They were the first state to win it for greenery. So I think that everything is renewed now. They're in the APC now. And the APC, everything is renewed.
Yeah.
Even if you have a criminal record. Anyway, but that aside, I'm just quoting Oshomole, by the way.
Yeah, well.
All your sins are forgiven when you come to the APC. It's the party of renewal.
If it's not infinity cap, it must be renewed.
No, but that's what Oshomole said. But let's come back to the budget. Let's come back to the budget. The first place we have to start from is the fact that this government claims it did more than 80%. Their budget performance was more than 80% from the last time out, and which is a good sign. But 80%. If you did 80% of your revenue, it's good. If you did 80% of your expenditure, then your budget should go down, not go up. But I'm guessing it was maybe revenue that brought it down. But that aside, if they're doing 80%, it's a good sign. It means that there's no budget deficit. They are claiming a surplus, which is a good thing. Claiming, I insist on using the word claiming. I looked at the budget, 1.62 trillion. Everybody's losing their minds. After Afia did 1 trillion, Enugu now ups that to well, look. I don't think there's anything to lose your mind about. The first thing I checked for, the budget can be 100 trillion. First thing I checked for, what is the capital to recurrent expenditure ratio? And Enugu is doing 80-20. If you're doing 80% capital, 20% recurrent, I have no problem. If you're keeping 30% for education, 15% healthcare, 10%...
10% healthcare.
10% healthcare, 15... 10 or 15? 10% healthcare. Then you're increasing your so your focus is agriculture, healthcare, education. You can't really fault that. And they are saying that about 60% of the budget is going to the economic sector and so on, just to drive the budget. So if they are doing that, I have no problem. Usually what we find in Nigeria is top-heavy recurrent expenditure budgets. Salaries, payments, arrears, pensions, allowances, bulletproof cars, and all these things usually take up a bulk of the money. But if it's 20%, and that's fine, then we look at where they're expecting to get the money from. Afia State said, look, 400 billion of this money is coming from loans. And people were losing their minds. I don't know why. Afia has a rule, which they did in the last budget, and I checked again, this budget is the same thing. None of the money loaned goes on recurrent expenditure. It goes on capital expenditure that even the assets acquired can repay the loans by themselves. So I looked at Enugu's zone, and Enugu is not, they're looking at 800 plus billion.
870
on internal generated revenue. And immediately, everybody started panicking. Because does that mean increased taxation?
Are
we going to now have a tax for everything? Will it be good morning? Would there be good morning tax? Good afternoon tax?
Merry Christmas tax. Merry Christmas tax.
Parking ICC tax.
So that's the worry now. Where is this IGR coming from? There are very few places IGR comes from. There's taxes, there's levies, there's government equity in businesses, there's government businesses earning revenue. These are the different places that government earns their revenue internally. Now, how many businesses does the Enugu government own? How many are they invested in? So, what's the equity portfolio? What is the revenue portfolio? That now leaves only one thing: taxation.
There's something I want to ask you, right? Because from pundits and critics, you know, some people are criticizing this budget, right? And they were saying something like, so why would the government of Peter Mbah talking about 17 aircrafts, sorry, 14, by the way,
aircrafts,
additional, right? And so many SMEs are closing up in Enugu'S state, that why not push that investment? So when you are asking for those tax, people wouldn't really, feel or get concerned about it, right? So why going for the elephant project when the main driver of an economy is drying up?
Three main reasons. One, and the first one, remember I told you there are ways government earns their revenue. And one of them I mentioned is that what businesses does the government own that is earning money? Enugu'S is an example of a business that can bring the government money. Secondly, is you want to bring traffic into Enugu. Usually, if people are sure that there's a dedicated means with everything you are doing, focusing on tourism, healthcare, because healthcare is not just healthcare for the people, it's medical tourism.
Medical tourism.
You want people to come here to use facilities. Same thing if you're boosting your educational profile, you want people to send their children here. Right. Like what's going on in Anambra, or what had been going on in Anambra since the Peter Obi time. The third one is your perception. Recently, my former boss, the MD of City FM Lagos, called me. You people are hot in that Enugu. I just flew your Enugu Air to Abuja. Lagos-Abuja flight. I don't do Enugu, but Enugu Air has registered on her.
Route here.
So those are the kind of things. And if tomorrow Enugu wants any loan, any grant, the reputation of the state that has that kind of assets is easy to deal with them. Now you're talking of why not push the money to the SMEs. What volume of money can the SMEs generate to boost your economy now? Now, I'm coming. Okay. I'm not saying ignore them. This is now the second leg of it. When you put money in things that generate a lot of revenue, there's a trickle-down effect. Instead of now giving SMEs money, because you put money in a big venture, Enugu Air is going to need caterers. They're going to need people to print their paperwork. They're going to need people to wash aircraft. They're going to need hotels for their cabin crew to stay in. Those people will eat. So already you're creating local business just by having that. And when you have a funnel that is bringing people into your city, you're also creating customers for people here. So instead of giving subsidizing SMEs and giving them money, actually create an environment where they can thrive.
All right.
Let it be opportunity available instead of doing an unsustainable grants.
Performance. I mean, you have been following the developments in Enugu State. You have monitored, you've been on the ground, you've been on the scene, right?
Yes.
How would you rate the performance of the 2025 budget?
So, just as an aside, one thing that gives me great confidence about how Enugu spends money is consequence. Enugu is the only state that I've seen contractors have their jobs revoked, they've been arrested, forced to pay. We heard of Sujimoto. That's not the only one. People are not aware. Before Sujimoto, I'm sure you were aware that there were some smart school contractors that had their contracts revoked and they were ordered to pay. There have been road contractors that have had their contracts revoked and have been ordered to pay. There are people who have visited EFCC. That sense of consequence gives me confidence. Because you see, for all the things you want to do, if there is no consequence for people defaulting and just taking money and running away, then it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. So the first thing that gives me a bit of calmness is the sense of consequence in Enugu. And I hope it continues, Now, the performance of the last budget, we saw, despite, the Nigerian factor, we saw the smart schools all take off at the same time, start at the same time. And then we saw why I would not really blame, as much as I want to blame Enugu state government, you can't blame them because we saw people who did their own well. And we saw people who didn't. And people who didn't do it well have had consequences. In terms of road construction, I think one of the most important things they did was the opening up of arteries, New Haven, Achara layouts. A lot of the inner roads in Enugu had more or less been abandoned by the local governments. So the state government has set a template. This needs to happen. Then the long-awaited Nsukka Expressway expansion has taken off. So there are things that have taken off that are very important, for Enugu. Then we hear now that the 260, farming co-ops, the land banks, all the things there. And I like the planning. It's always 260 smart schools, 260 primary care center. Why? Everything is happening at ward level. Everything is going down to ward level. Then there seems to be good synergy between the local governments and the state governments. So even though they're getting their money directly, we're seeing a lot of counterpart funding on projects. Okay, the state government is saying, don't bring the whole money. Local government, bring some, we'll bring some, and let's do this. Now they want to bring, I think, about 15,000 housing units, mass housing units.
Right.
The last time, if you remember, Natalie, sometime when we interviewed the governor, there was something I asked him, which was about rent. And he said the government cannot, tell landlords what to use as rent, what to charge as rent, because they don't control the price of building materials, they don't control the price of labor, and price control is very socialist. It's not good for a free economy. That what the government can do is provide housing that is cheaper and, force the market price down. So I think, doing this now, bringing mass housing, will definitely, because if the government is bringing housing that is cheaper, because
proposing 30,000, 15,000 should be ready by
because in Lagos we saw this promise, and then they brought out houses and started putting them at prices that only cronies of the government could afford. The government needs to make an affordable mortgage scheme, or the government needs to own and rent and control their rent. The government can do that. Own and rent, don't sell. Own and rent and control your rent. That way you will drop prices or own and mortgage, affordable mortgage. But if they decide they want to come out and sell, what will happen is political cronies, opportunists, robber barons, anarcho-capitalists, they will come and they will buy everything and then make it unaffordable to everybody again. So that's what they need to do.
Let's track back 2024 budget of disruptive economic growth and 2025 budget of exponential growth and inclusive prosperity. We target to what the campaign was all about, and they keep pronouncing these things. 180 days, we have water in Enugu State. 260 smart schools will be up in all the wards of the local government. The smart agro farm, the 10 kilometers ward level roads and all that. This is the question people are out there asking. You're bringing a budget of 1.62 trillion for the renewed momentum budget, budget of renewed momentum. But some of all these promises and this stuff stacked in the X budgets, there's nowhere to be found. Okay, do you open the tap and water is running in your area? So many places in the urban area and semi-urban areas, they don't have water at this point in time still, right? The 260 smart school is meant to be up and running because there was a tag and deadline.
Yeah.
So what happened, right? The 10-kilometer roads in the rural areas and all that stuff, what happened? The agro smart school and smart farm, what happened? These are the questions people are asking, tagging it to this new budget, and they're concerned about that. That's the hysteria.
It's a rational concern, but let's look at things with nuance. These questions they're asking are questions I asked myself, and I went to go and look. Let us now break this thing down and look at it properly. First of all, let's address the elephants in the room. If you look at Afia went from 500 billion to 1 trillion, Enugu went to 1.6 trillion. Let us first remember that one of the reasons that the budgets also spiked wildly is currency. The difference in currency value across budgets is the first thing. So what you were buying at 1,000 Naira is now 1,005. So your budget will go up with it. Even if you want to achieve the same thing as last year, your cost will go up. Secondly, a government must give deadlines for projects. But I already mentioned the fact that you can control everything except the people who will default. What you have to do then is there a consequence for defaulters? Now, where there is no consequence, there's a problem. You get, so, because people will commit, there's no society without crime. There's no society without misdemeanor. But what does the government do about it? I'll give you an example. I sent this, I remember I sent a message back then to Dan Wome then, in Tinker's Corner, on the road going straight to Godfrey Okoye from the old airport road, there is a place that kekes bust the pipe to create a pool where they wash kekes, and it flows down the road like a river. This pipe is a main artery coming into that whole areas of Tinker's Corner. They come, repair, they burst it again. This is that they deliberately break it. You come, the pipe is repaired. You pass on a Saturday, you see it's broken again, the pond is full, kekes are all washing their kekes there. It's right there if you want to locate it. It's just almost opposite Roban stores there. On the road coming straight from Old Airport Road, that's Infra Petrol Station in Tinker's Corner. Now, if people at some parts of Tinker's Corner are saying they're not having water, is that the Enugu state government? In MNA, people had built houses over pipelines, and the government said we're going to have to reroute and go a long way around. This is going to take time, and it is the same thing in many overcrowded suburbs. So what we're going to do is, while we're doing this, we're going to put water galleries. Over and over again, people were stealing the taps, the tap heads. Is it the Enugu state government, or is it the one that people were rerouting the pipes going to the water gallery to their houses? Then there's no pressure for the general public. Because one guy has a big house in an overpopulated ghetto. Maybe he's a chairman. You go and run the pipe from the pipe going there for general access, free water. Then there's now no pressure in that water because the water is going to your compound. Is that the Enugu state government? A lot of times, we ourselves as citizens, we have problems. I'm not saying the government is not without fault. I'm not saying they cannot do better. Of course they can. But we also have to apportion the blame, very correctly. Where I can fault the government is, the smart agro hubs, what's going on. Because I know very early the investors came in. Very, very early. I don't know what the delay is. And I will not speak on it because unlike most of these other things, I don't have all the details. I don't have a lot of first-hand information. I will not speculate. But a lot of these problems they are talking about, the smart school contractors were, and what pisses me off is they were mobilized. It's not that government is doing them. They were mobilized, and people were doing shoddy jobs to steal money. But then when the Enugu government is going after people, you say, you're going after people from Enugu West or Enugu East. Oh, you're bringing contractors from outside.
That takes us now back to the tribalism debate at Enugu State. But because we don't have much time, would you briefly tell us what your criticism is of this new budget? What are the concerns that you have while we wrap up?
Well, oversight of the budget. I think it's too governor. The governor does too much in the sense that it always has to get back to the governor to solve issues. There are one or two commissioners who seem to have a grip of things. Obiozo transports. I don't see the governor having to be overtly involved in issues concerning the transport sector. I'll give him credit for that. Gerald Otiji, who is now housing, who was works.
And has a lot of work on his hands now.
I don't also see the governor too overtly having to be involved in his own,
So then who is causing trouble then?
No, it's not trouble. I'm saying oversight.
Who is having oversight challenges?
Well, let me put it like this. I've called two commissioners for you, right? That I'm sure are on top of their game. Take your pick from anyone else.
Nnamdi, political and economic correspondent. I would have liked you to mention.
One of the greatest aspects in Enugu State, regards to everything that is being built now.
Oversight.
Let me give some examples.
With oversight.
Regards to every infrastructure put in place right now, the Enugu air transportation and whatnot, and that is tourism. Is that department, is that institution working?
Well, let's go there now. If we're talking of a place where we could have a lot more done, because the governor's focus is very much on tourism. But I don't know if that handshake is very tight.
It's loosely.
I mean, internally, I don't know if that handshake is very tight. And let me explain why. Enugu is opening so many opportunities, but we don't seem to have a lot of drive from there. I think, tourism, sports, doing decently, but another place too that, I'm very aware of Niola and Bukola Olopade meeting the governor directly for the Enugu Marathon. I'm very aware of a lot of things that have to come to the governor direct, landmark governor direct. So we have ministries that is as if the governor is the commissioner.
Like?
I've called two already now. Tourism, sports and culture. And I can call more like that.
I mean, this conversation will continue. Nnamdi, sometimes it's great to end on a high because we're going to reconvene and have a conversation around the performance of the various ministries in Enugu. So thank you for your time this morning and keeping it political and economic. All right. Thank you once again.